anti-multiculturalism and what they've been describing as all anti-Muslim thinking within Europe?
It is historical. It is due to current events, increased immigration at the moment. As I said, it can be even said that some political parties in Europe, populism is rising there. And for instance, in Finland, in Sweden, these parties got into government, into parliament. They have a great backing. And some critics say that even these parties can be fueling this ideology.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Savage Nation. We're going to talk about the phenomenal story, the awful story of the Norway massacre. We're going to talk about the fact that George Soros, perhaps the most dangerous man in the world, has closed his hedge fund to avoid disclosures required by the new SEC. We're going to talk about another Democrat resigning amid sexual encounter allegations and other stories on the Savage Nation. But first, back to the horrible story of the Norway massacres. I want to put the record straight. I want you to call me at 1-800-449-8255 because there's a lot of BS being slung around here, both left and right. Both sides using this for their own agenda. Why don't you see if my mantle, which is independent conservative, holds up today? Okay, so listen to what I'm going to tell you. Here's my monologue. The Christian terrorist. In the aftermath of the Norway massacre, talking heads are telling us that the crimes of Anders Behring Breivik are simply the product of insanity. Today his lawyer claimed that his beliefs are insane. Everyone is claiming that this had nothing to do with his Christianity. Even the leprechaun Bill O'Reilly on Fox News said Breivik is not a Christian. But the terrible truth of the matter is that Breivik is a Christian. He loudly proclaims his Christianity. He calls himself, quote, 100% Christian in his manifesto. He claims to be a member of the Knights Templar, which is presumably a reinvention of the 12th century Christian organization which participated in the Crusades. When he justifies his violence, who does he quote? He quotes the Bible, Luke, Matthew, Isaiah, Daniel, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Exodus, Samuel, Judges, and Psalms. The manifesto that he wrote says, quote, God will anoint you with his power to go into battle, and God can be a man of war if he wants to be. Even the dates listed in his manifesto are aligned with dates in the history of the Christian-Muslim conflicts. For example, the date he selected for the final purge of Muslims from Norway was in 2083, which is the 400th anniversary of 1683 at the Battle of Vienna, where the Muslim Ottoman Empire was defeated and stopped from invading the rest of Europe. Just as the radical Muslim terrorists are Muslim, this radical Christian terrorist is a Christian. And just as moderate Muslims must speak out against the violent acts of their radical brethren, good Christians must speak out strongly against violence of this nature and against any radical terrorists that may be within their ranks. Radical Muslim terrorists distort the Quran and the Islamic tradition in ways most Muslims would never accept. But nevertheless, they base their terrorism in the tradition of Islam. Anders Breivik has done the same. The Islamo-fascists attack and kill their own people in order to further their own radical ends. They've killed Muslims, that is, Muslim killing Muslims, in Iraq, in Morocco, in Afghanistan. And why did they do it? Why? Because many Islamic radicals have a greater animosity towards dissenting Muslims than toward Westerners. In Pakistan, the radical group, Sunni Muslim group, Sipah-e-Sahaba, has not only killed many members of the Shia minority, but many of their own Sunni clerics have been killed as well, because the clerics rejected their extremist agenda, often imposing their radical vision of Islam is more important to them than the hatred of the West. Similarly, the Christian terrorist in Norway targeted his own people. He wanted to kill members of the Labour Party, native-born Norwegians, because in his twisted mind, eliminating members of a liberal political party in his own country was more important to him than eliminating an outside threat. I've said time after time on this show, The Savage Nation, that the greatest threat, and the greatest victims, rather, of radical Islam, the greatest victims of radical Islam happen to be their own co-religionists. And now a radical Christian fundamentalist has attacked his own people in order to further his extremist cause. Now, it is true that Anders Breivik twisted the Christian tradition in directions that 99% of Christians could never accept. But his violence was based in Christian thought and history. The Islamo-fascists killed their own in Pakistan, in Iraq, and Afghanistan. The radical Sikh Hindus killed their own when they blew up Air India Flight 182 in 1985 and killed 22 Indians. And now, a radical Christian terrorist in Norway has killed his own as well. We find that the greatest enemy is the enemy within, and those who refuse to acknowledge the connection will never be able to stop this madness within their ranks. Footnote to this monologue on the Savage Nation. Bill O'Reilly was dead wrong yesterday saying that this cold-blooded murderer is not a Christian. I've just proven it. 2, Glenn Beck's lack of historical knowledge is appalling. Glenn Beck said that the youth camp that he visited, the murderer visited, and slaughtered 70-some-odd kids on, was training the equivalent of Hitler Youth. No, Glenn, you got it 180 degrees wrong. It was modeled on the Soviet state-run Young Pioneers, where youth were turned into Communist Party activists. The phone number here is 1-800-449-8255. If you have a comment on my comments, I want to hear from you right now. 1-800-449-8255. Let's begin in Wisconsin. Tom, you're on the Savage Nation.
Dr. Savage, I've been a Christian fundamentalist for over 12 years now. Nowhere in the fundamentals of Christianity does it say that you have the right to go murder people. So
that's right, because you're a rational man, but he's irrational. But he's a Christian and identifies as a Christian.
Rational. That doesn't give you the right to try and say that you're a Christian. I could say...
Whoa, hold on. I didn't say he's Christian. He said he's Christian.
Well... he says he's Christian. Barack Obama says he's a Christian. We know that's a lie.
Yeah, but you see, here's the problem. You cannot simply say that because people do things you don't approve of, you denounce or renounce their religious affiliation. It's for them to renounce their religious affiliation, not you.
I can compare it to that. That's our standard. Our standard isn't my opinion. The standard is the...
Well, wait a minute. Then did you hear my monologue or not? I said that he twisted his own religious beliefs. Didn't you hear me say that?
I caught just the end of it.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, thanks for calling with just the end of it. You see, this is the problem with talk radio. People either hear a piece of what you say or none of what you say, or they hear what they want to hear. Shall I read the monologue again so you finally get it right? Would you like me to read it all over again, and maybe you can come into the classroom late next time again and tell me you were late because you were snorting glue in the locker room? I mean, what do you mean you got it late? Either you listen to what I say and you argue with me, or you don't listen to what I say and don't argue with me. Sit there like the dummy you are and not know what's going on around you. I'll repeat it again. The Norway murderer was a Christian, not by my definition. In his own manifesto, he calls himself, quote, 100% Christian. In his own manifesto, he claims to be a member of the Knights Templar, which is presumably a reinvention of the 12th century Christian organization which participated in the Crusades. When he justifies his own violence in his manifesto, he quotes the Bible, Luke, Matthew, Isaiah, Daniel, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Exodus, Samuel, Judges, and Psalms. His own manifesto says, God will anoint you with his power to go into battle, and God can be a man of war if he wants to be. Shall I go on? I will when I return, but I want to hear from the rest of you. 1-800-449-8255. Michael Savage. Barbara, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I gotta join in here. I big supporter of you, but though the man nominally he may be a Christian, this may be a semantic debate. He's not a Christian any more than Benedict Arnold was a good American. I mean, he can call himself...
So wait, then you're agreeing then with the government, liberals, who argue that the 9/11 Muslims are not really Muslims because they twisted the Quran. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, I have a very close Muslim friend who says that they have gone off the rails.
Well, wait, hold on, but they're still Muslims, aren't they? Or do you say they're not Muslims?
In a nominal sense, they're Muslims, but they're not...
Okay, so in the same sense, this man is a Christian.
Well, if you think Jim Jones was a Christian...
We're not talking about Jim Jones. We are talking about a man who quotes the Bible, who says he's a Christian, who invokes... symbolism and dates from the Crusades. He is steeped in Christianity. He is oozing Christianity. That does not mean he represents modern Christianity. Those are two different things.
Larry David, the schmuck Jewish guy, is he a Jew?
He would say he's Jewish. I would say he represents the worst of the Jews, but he wouldn't agree. But he wouldn't agree with that. He would say he's a better Jew than a rabbi.
Mike, that's a direct parallel analogy to what this fiend is.
I hear you. Hey, listen, we're probably saying the same thing. And over a beer or two, we'd come to understand we understand each other. But I am telling you that as an independent conservative, I'm not going to sit here and listen to this twisted malarkey that O'Reilly's coming up with, that the man is not a Christian, or that the uneducated dolt Glenn Beck comes up with, saying that the guy killed them because they're members of the Hitler Youth.
I agree with you. And while we're...
All right, well, okay. Listen, here's the question of the day on the Savage Nation. Do you think the Norwegian massacre artist is sane, or is he a rational Christian terrorist? Do you think the Norwegian shooter was sane, or is he a rational Christian terrorist? 1-800-449-8255. We'll be right back. Savage.